Well, I mean, one of the points which, you know, neuroscientists have recognized is that our brain, which, you know, is mostly issuing the orders, is blind and dumb and cannot hear, and in fact it is cut off from sensory perception, and so our eyes have to send back messages, our ears have to send back messages, and then the poor brain, which doesn't know what's going on at all, has to make that into some kind of reality and project it out. That's why why they always say that everything is like a dream, like an illusion, like, you know, it's not really what we think we are seeing.
Exactly, yeah.
What do you want to talk about?
Anything, up to you.
I don't know.
Really?
You've been talking about so many interesting things when we were not recorded. So maybe you can repeat some of that now.
Okay. This thing I read recently about Milarepa's life story, and one thing that really resonated with me was when he was, you know, we are so obsessed with materialistic things these days. For example, especially the young people, what they do, I have to go to the washroom. Okay, number two, not number one. Number two, I have to go to the washroom, I will take some time. Okay, you go. Let me just, you know, and they come back from the washroom. I say, what happened? I forgot my phone. You know, so like without the phone, they can't. I said, yeah, they can't. They can't do their business. I said, you need a toilet paper. You don't need a phone. So that reminded me of Milarepa's story. You know, and how much we are obsessing over small, meaningless things. Milarepa, once he was meditating, and I read this in his biography, he looked around in his cave, and there was nothing there, just some empty pots. And Milarepa thought, I have a little bit of tsampa, you know, roasted barley, grounded. I have little dry nettles, but I have no firewood to cook this. And this is maybe a little bit too little. I'm becoming too extreme. You know, this is too much. Maybe I should get some firewood at least. So he went out of his cave, and obviously he was meditating in the Himalayan mountains, where you don't have abundance of tree like you have here at DGL. So he went out, and I'm sure he found some twigs and some, you know, leaves or whatever that grows, bushes. He gathered them, and the wind would blow them away. Yeah, and he would run after, and he would gather them again, and he had only his simple robe, and then the wind would blow the robe away, and out of shame he would grab the robe and run after it, and then the leaves will get blown away, the firewood. So he spent some time doing that, and then he realized, if I can't even let go of this torn white shawl, the robe that I'm wearing, and if I can't let go of this dry leaves and twigs, how can I achieve enlightenment? So he let go of both of them, and he just sat down in meditation, completely naked. So that really, you know, it's such a simple story, and we talk about achieving enlightenment within one lifetime, but then we can't even go to the washroom without our phone sometimes. You know, we can't do simple things without, you know. It's just so astounding when you look at how we live our lives compared to the great masters of the past.
Oh, well, exactly that. I mean, compared with Milarepa, I mean,
Yeah, even when I was in retreat, you know, you have the bare necessities. You have a mattress, you have your meditation box, you have your attendant who brings food outside your room. He gives a knock and you eat it and you leave it empty. But it was so luxurious, you know, compared to how Milarepa meditated. Yet we still claim to be practitioners of Vajrayana. We claim to be lineage holders or followers of our lineage, of the great Drukpa Kagyu lineage. Of course, the blessing is there, but then we are not sometimes applying ourselves to the same extent that these Naropas and Tilopas and Milarepas applied themselves, you know? Yeah. What about you when you were in retreat in Karshi,
Yeah,
you were there
well,
for some time.
as I said before, I stayed for about the first 6 years in a small monastery there, Tayo Gompa, and that was lovely. And of course, it helped because it gave me some credentials because everybody saw me going up and down. But then in the winter, the first winter I was there, this old nun said, oh, now everybody comes back, all the monks and nuns come back to the Gompa in the winter, so you will need 20 cups.
Okay.
And I said, 20 cups?
20
What
cups
for?
of, yeah.
And she said, well, we have tea parties. So when we all come to you, there's 20 of us, so you need to
serve
have
them.
20 cups.
Yeah.
And at that point, I thought, maybe this is not the ideal place to do retreat. Because also everybody on the flat roofs, they would clear the snow, then they would sit on the roof and talk to each other
Chit-chat.
across the roofs. So,
You mean like across the houses, the distance?
yeah, well, you know, everybody had their own house.
Yes.
And it had a flat roof, and then the snow would fall, and then you would get up and you would shovel the snow off the roof, otherwise it would drip in because it was just bare earth. But I lived there for 6 years because they're really lovely people. I love the Tayo Gompa people. But eventually I felt I needed to get more space. So I remember I went up above the Gompa. And of course, as you know, Lahul is called Lahul, land of the Dakinis. So I prayed very hard to the Dakinis, and I said, look, from my side, I really want to practice. From your side, please help with this. Find me somewhere which is suitable for doing retreat. And I thought maybe I could build a small house. So I went to see a couple of the nuns there, and I said, you know, and I felt that what I had said, what I had asked for, had been taken, had been accepted.
Okay.
So then I went to see these two old nuns, and Chenyomo and her mother, and I said, I'm thinking to build a little house above Tayo. And they said, well, how can you build a little house? You've got no money. And, you know, it costs money to build a house. Why don't you live in a cave?
This was in 90, what, 70?
This was, yeah, this was, must have been in the early 70s.
Wow.
So then they said, why don't you live in a cave? And I said, well, we have discussed this so many times, and there are very few caves. Where there are caves, there is no water. Where there is water, there are people.
Yes.
So they said, yes, it's true, we always said that. But just last night, my mother suddenly remembered having seen a cave along the way there, which has water nearby, and nobody ever goes.
Wow.
So I said, okay, let's go. So then, you know, a whole group of the monastery went along, and it was about an hour and a half from the Gompa, and there was a stream, you know, about half a kilometer away, a very good stream of pure water. And so I said, okay, this is it, I'm going to live here. We have to build a wall in front. It was like a hangover, it wasn't a proper cave. And they said, no, you can't live here because it's too high. And I said, no, it will be all right in the winter, you know, with the snow. And then they said, well, men from the army camp will come up and rape you.
Oh.
And I said, look, by the time they get up there, they'll be so exhausted. I'll just give them a cup of tea, right? And then they said, there will be trull. And I thought that meant snakes.
Okay.
So I said, well, actually, I like snakes. And they were awfully impressed. And then later I thought, trull? No, trull, there are no snakes in Lahore. What are they trull? Oh, they meant ghosts.
Oh.
And so I had said to them, oh yeah, I like ghosts. That's why they were so impressed, right? But actually, I don't mind ghosts. So I wrote to come to Rinpoche, and he asked, does it face south? Is it dry? Is there a water supply? And then he said, okay, you go ahead. So then They put a wall with doors and windows. It was very small. And I moved in. And then I made a little garden. I was not Milarepa. I had a little garden with turnips and peas and things like that. And potatoes.
Yeah, they grow great potatoes.
Yeah.
Cabbages.
And so then and it was perfect for retreat because once it started snowing in November, nobody would come until May.
Yeah. That's the thing with Lahore, it snows so heavily.
Very heavily.
Yeah. They say that they can't exit through the door. They have to exit through the windows.
Yeah, so that's why the door fortunately went inwards.
Yeah, and they have smoke signals in case, a misfortune happens in a neighbor's house. Even the monks from Himis who go to Lahore to take care of some of the temples and to do rituals and pujas to the people, they used to face the same issues a few years ago. But now because of global warming, things are changing, so it's not as drastic as it used to be. But when I was in retreat, it was in Darjeeling because Zigar Gumpa, we have another monastery in Darjeeling. It's a lovely place. It's quite above. It's above the main market, so it's not near the. So it's very peaceful, very quiet, very beautiful. You would love it. I was there for 3 years and 3 months, and for the first 3 months, I remember. I went with the intention to practice and try to gain some wisdom, and maybe not become enlightened within one lifetime, but at least 1%. Yeah. So, but it was very tough because initially when I went for the first 3 months, I could not stop thinking of pizza, of movies, of sports, cricket, football. All the meaningless samsaric things. They are entertaining, but they don't serve any purpose. So I just couldn't. It just kept playing in my mind. And I remember before I went into retreat, I made the mistake of looking up to this great Bollywood movie that was going to be released. But it did not release until I went into retreat, so I could not watch the movie. But what happens in Bollywood, they release the songs before the movie, like a month in advance, to build up hype. And they show the music videos where they're dancing around the trees, And sometimes in those music videos, they play some stories about fighting, breaking up or shooting each other. So I had seen the music videos, but I couldn't watch the movie. So in retreat, I made up an entire movie in my own mind. So there were 2 men, there were 2 women, and I was like, who gets married to whom? What happens? Who's the bad guy? Who's the one who cheats? And so on and so forth. So I realized it was my defiled, confused mind that I was seeing clearly, that the settling was happening. So initially I was very upset that I was feeling this. Afterwards I realized that it was all the garbage that I saw in this very, ramshackle of a mind, like an abandoned hut that you visit after 10 years and you find dust everywhere. So that's what I saw, Jetsunma, because we are always looking outside, Well,
the point is, if you don't have any external input, and the mind comes up with its own entertainment program.
Yeah, you call it entertaining, but for me it was.
It's trying to work out what's going to hook you.
Yeah, but I'm just fascinated also with the idea that the way we are formed by nature, we are at a disadvantage to practice Buddhism or to achieve enlightenment, because look, we are designed by nature to look outwards. Our eyes are looking outwards, our skins are outside, our nostrils are focusing outside, our ears are like these huge, speakers or microphones listening to everything on both sides. So I think by nature, maybe countless lifetimes of confusion, living in this confused state of mind, always looking outside for gratification and sensual pleasures, we are designed by nature to look outwards. And as a Nangpa, insider, to change your focus inside, to look for the goodness within you, to look for that bodhicitta, that precious gem that is within each and every sentient being. We are already at a disadvantage because we're not programmed to look inside. So that is a very, very big challenge. How did you overcome this?
Well, I mean, one of the points which, neuroscientists have recognized is that our brain, which, is mostly issuing the orders, is blind and dumb and cannot hear. And in fact, it is cut off from sensory perception. And so our eyes have to send back messages, our ears have to send back messages. And then the poor brain, which doesn't know what's going on at all, has to make that into some kind of reality and project it out. That's why why they always say that everything is like a dream, like an illusion, like, it's not really what we think we are seeing.
Exactly, yeah.
Why? Because the poor brain is trying to give us some kind of picture so that we can live. If it doesn't give us some kind of picture to relate to, we would just sit there and die.
Yeah.
So that's nature's trying to, but because it doesn't know, and it can never know. We have no idea really what's going on. We just have our interpretation of what's going on. So Buddhism is wonderful because it really looks into the nature of that mind which is trying to know and recognizes how much of it is just what they now call controlled hallucination.
Contorted hallucination. Contorted hallucination. Yeah, it's very interesting. My experience, if I may share, is that I have a keen interest into quantum physics, quantum science, astrophysics. So I listen to a lot of podcasts from eminent scientists, and I try to educate myself as much as possible about how scientists perceive the world and try to understand the world that we live in, also from a scientific perspective. And they also talk about how limited because what we are seeing is basically light and light bouncing off objects. So we are seeing a very limited spectrum of the things that they are. And there's so many things that we don't have the senses to perceive, because our senses are so limited. And it gets more limited as you age. You see less and less, your eyes become weaker, your ears become weaker. Obviously, when you're young, you can perceive everything quite vividly, but still not as vividly as things actually are. So maybe that's where the Buddhist practices are so powerful, because you're using an instrument, you're using an organ, let's say, which is your mind, which doesn't rely on any sensory organ, which has unlimited power. Right? So also this came into my mind when I was practicing Vajrasattva, okay, and also Vajrayogini, Guru Yoga and Vajrasattva, because I thought you have to visualize Vajrasattva on top of your head, Amrita dripping into your body, but I couldn't really connect with it. I said, I've never seen Vajrasattva. And he's sitting, not touching my head with Vajrayogini, in this very comfortable position on a lotus. I'd never seen him, I'd never felt him. I mean, if you told me that to drink some blessing water from your hands, I would gladly do that, because I have faith in you, because I respect you, I love you for the work that you have done, not only for Buddha Dharma, but especially for women in the Himalayan region. So because of this respect and the connection that we have, I have no ego, I have this sense of respect towards you, so I have no problem. But Vajrasattva, I've never met him. Tara, I've never seen her. Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 arms. I mean, that's like a jellyfish. I mean, that's like honestly, maybe coming from Rinpoche doesn't sound very appropriate, but that's like a deep sea creature that they are finding even today. Yesterday I was watching on Joe Rogan's podcast. They're talking about some giant squids with very long tentacles. I mean, 25 feet long. That's very long. And maybe some other squid or octopus that is like 100 feet long. I mean, they're like aliens. And if tomorrow I saw, like Jetsunma Palmo, when she saw Avalokiteshvara, if I saw Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 arms, with 1,000 eyes, with 11 heads in front of me, I think I would freak out. You know what I mean? I would freak out. So that's the same thing I had with Vajrasattva. I mean, I couldn't really relate to him. he's like this beautiful prince-like person with this concert, on top of my head. And so what happened to me was, maybe I thought I'm trying to think about Vajrasattva. Maybe I don't have the necessary means to access the dimension that he resides in the Sambhogakaya dimension. And I thought maybe they are so evolved that they have gone beyond biological restrictions, limitations. Mm-hmm. They've gone beyond, what biological limitations we have, like 60, 70 years of lifespan, blah, 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 eyes, nose, they've gone beyond that. So once you think of it in that way, that they're not an alien or something that is completely, unnatural, they probably are highly evolved beings. They've reached a state of evolution that transcends Nirmanakaya into Sambhogakaya. Then you could kind of have some faith in them and relate to them and have a little bit of trust. Maybe it's just my limited, my limitation that I'm not able to perceive them. But then you need a little bit of element of faith, and then it worked a little bit. I did my practice, and in dreams I dreamt of taking bathing, drinking milk.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Holiness coming and giving me my, His Holiness Gelung Drukpa coming and giving me fruits, feeding me milk, giving me teaching. So I looked at the manual, the scriptures, and those are the signs. Yeah, so I struggled with it really, and it's not very easy. Like we were talking about the refuge tree. When you first look at it, glance at it, it's so confusing. Is this right? Well, what was your experience with Ngondro and visualization and interaction with the other dimension of Sambhogakaya?
Yes, I once had to do this practice at Ladro, and you had to say 120 deities in about 10 different places at the same time.
Wow. And
they all had different consorts with different colors. They weren't even color coordinated. Kampa Rinpoche said, the previous Kampa, he told my Dharma sister, just see it very vague and don't, just get a feeling it's there even though you can't see it. So then when I went to see him, I said, so I can just see it sort of vague, and he said, no, you have to see it very, very precise, everyone exactly, even down to their eyes. And so when I was practicing, the thing was, it was so totally impossible that you kind of threw yourself into it, and it was true that you couldn't think of anything else. That just was so complicated that even there was 120 deities in a space that wasn't even a space between the skull and the skin and the hairline.
Oh my God.
Right? And they were all over the body in different places, and it was so totally impossible that it actually, in its own way, worked. Because, certainly your mind was very, very attentive. You didn't have there was no time to think of anything except trying to get all these 120 deities. Each one was a mandala of 120 deities, so you had thousands of deities.
Wow.
I mean, totally impossible, but I guess it was a way of making, he said the mind will become very sharp and very clear. I can't say it became very sharp and very clear, but it certainly was, one-pointed. They obviously come up with these practices because at some point somebody discovered they work.
Yes. So that's the faith I developed in Buddha Dharma, because I thought, initially I struggled with Buddhism. I, being a Rinpoche, belonging to Dzigar Gompa, which is a very old institution in Tibet, along with Kampagar, Dzigar. Yeah, and all the previous Palga Rinpoches, 7 of them served Dzigar Gompa and Buddha Dharma with one-pointed devotion and worked really hard. In this lifetime, for some reason, I was born in Ladakh. Okay, so I have a lovely family. I'm really grateful. I'm really close to my mother. I see her as a manifestation of Tara. She's in fact with me right now in Tsopema because the roads are really bad, so I didn't bring her. She gets car sick. So yeah, I mean, I had great support, but then the issue was that I had a very curious mind, and I was rebellious by nature. Not now, but I was. My teacher was very strict. He was from Kham, so naturally they're very strict. So I used to get beaten a lot.
They're gay.
Yes, like he was from Rinpoche, so you know it's I think a region very close to Zigar, but in Dergi area, very fierce people, very devoted, very compassionate, very devoted, but very fierce when it comes to discipline and such things. So I really struggled a lot, you know. But he wanted to instill discipline in me, which I see now. But it was very painful for me when I was young. So I was very rebellious. So he would say, you can't read comic books. You shouldn't read Hindi. You shouldn't read English. Only Tibetan. Only scriptures. Memorize them by evening. Do this meditation. Learn this grammar. Do this Lama dancing. It was so many things. And I was 8 years old. You know, I was very close to my mom, and I was separated. And it was not my choice, at least consciously.
How old were you when you were discovered?
1.5.
Oh,
but they was too young. So
it's too young.
Yeah, but I was enthroned when I was 8, so I could spend some time with my mother. So I really struggled. So I was very rebellious. So I used to read all kinds of comic books, you know, hiding them under my robes. And with the robes, you have all these creases, you know, where you can literally can smuggle all kind of things and carry, you know, until you start bulging and dropping things. You look like a walking supermarket. So I was very rebellious, and I struggled with Buddhism, you know, my role as a Rinpoche, respecting the Buddhist teachings, understanding the Buddhist teachings, you know. I really struggled. And I was very curious about the world. I wanted to, you know, see the world. And I went to Europe. I came back because I was looking for happiness. I said, suffer so much. And I was looking for happiness in the outside world, in the Western countries. And I didn't find happiness, though I did find some sensual pleasures, you know, like good things to see, good food to eat, you know, so and so. But then I came back to the practice, and I had a different perspective. So what I thought was, like you said, all these methods are tried and tested, you know, over I don't know how many centuries, right? Over thousands of years. Originated from India, you know, then transported to Tibet, and now again coming back to the Himalayas and you know, spreading around the world. So it has been tried and tested for so many centuries. And people, great masters like Milarepa, Naropa, they achieve enlightenment because of these techniques that you just mentioned, that the previous Kamtu Rinpoche Gyaldo Kampa taught you. Initially not to worry, afterwards to pay close attention to every detail. So they have, I think there's a method behind that madness of these very specific instructions, you know. So I started to pay very close attention, not only to the written instructions, but also to the verbal instructions, because those are very specific to the teacher. Yeah. You know, let's say you have the previous Kamtu Rinpoche, and let's say you have the previous Zigar Rinpoche or some other great Lama. Maybe they wouldn't give the same instruction. They have their own experiences. It's the same text, but sometimes they teach out of their experience. So these are priceless. And they're so custom made, you know, custom made for Tenzin Palmo, custom made from Kamtu Rinpoche. Yeah, so maybe what worked for you might not work for me. Yeah. You know, maybe what worked for me might not work for you. It's very interesting, isn't it?
Well, that was why when at that time, when Kamtu Rinpoche, the previous Kamtu Rinpoche was still with us, I had 3 Dharma sisters. One was from Holland, one was from America, one was from Switzerland. Okay. And the 4 nuns. And it was very interesting in that, as you're saying, because if we were going to do any practice, they would give us all together the wong. But the actual instruction, they insisted on giving each one of us separately. And often it was quite different.
Yeah, very interesting.
Which nowadays is very difficult because of the more popular lamas have so many disciples. Yeah. They cannot possibly do that anymore. So they just give what in general is good for people. But they can't, and people miss the fact that they cannot feel that they're getting, you know, instruction which is tailored just for them.
But I think that's also your good karma. That's the good karma of the, you know, the Dutch nun and the American nun, you know, your sisters. maybe that's your good karma, that you were born and brought up in the Dharma in such an era where you had such a great master who paid personal, close attention to you. And, you know, instead of trying to fit one ice cube, you know, one ice form into different vessels, he literally was pouring water into your vessels. And you all had different shapes, you know?
Yes, exactly.
So that's maybe your good karma, Jetsunma. Yeah.
And of course, we were also incredibly fortunate because there were still those Tokdens, those yogis who had come from Tibet.
Yeah, they're incredible.
And so, you know, we also would get teaching from them. And it was an extraordinary time. The main problem was that although they were there, we didn't always know what we should be asking for.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there was so little available that time on Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah.
It took several years before they even mentioned Ngondro.
And what about the language barrier?
We all spoke Tibetan. My Tibetan's gone, but at that time, I mean, the Tokdens at least only knew Tibetan.
Wow.
And that was also a problem for people because people would come and there would be the Lama wanting to teach, but you know, they didn't know Tibetan, the Lamas didn't speak any Western language, and so that also was an obstacle in those days.
I personally, I paid attention to that detail when I was young. I thought, I don't want language to be the barrier in the future if I were to teach to people. So I always felt very connected when I spoke in the local language. That's why I really studied English. I literally self-taught myself English, you know, reading. I started with Tintin in Tibet. Then I finished the entire series.
You have such a facility for language, Rinpoche, which is absolutely amazing.
Thank you. I have a long tongue. I have a really long tongue. I don't know if I should stick it out, but you know, people say that people who have long tongues, they usually are quite talkative and good with, you know, they have a big mouth. So, yeah, it's, I don't know, it's, I love people, you know, I just love people. And I don't want to, I don't like sitting on a throne and just touching their head, you know, which is the form of blessing, rigdol, you know, blessing by touch that we supposed to do. But I prefer to put my arms over the shoulder, you know, like ask them not only how they are spiritually, but how they are personally. Because under every robe there's a person.
Of course.
You know, there's a woman, there's a man, you know. So I always tell my, you know, fellow Rinpoche friends and my colleagues, Rinpoches, that you should, yeah, of course you should bless on the forehead, that's our tradition. But you should also try, after the forehead, go down to the shoulder. Just tap on the shoulder, you know, and just ask, how are you? Did you eat? Are you hungry? Do you need to use the washroom? You know, I mean, if it's a woman, you just ask, yeah, I mean, like men and women, they have different issues. And Himalayas, it's now it's getting better. But women used to face a lot of discrimination, criticism, and they didn't used to talk about like the menstrual cycle, you know, and so many other issues. So women would suffer silently. Yeah, and this I heard from some of my relatives that they used to use old rags because they didn't have proper sanitation, you know, pads. So they didn't have the proper hygiene necessary, and they were so shy, and they would feel so ashamed when, you know, when they would have very strong periods and they would maybe drip a blood of, you know, drop of blood somewhere, and people would literally just, you know, kill them, like not kill them, but scold them and beat them and literally kick them out of the temple. That is why in many temples, even in Ladakh, they forbid women from entering.
Really?
They used to forbid. Now it's getting more. Now it's getting more open.
Yeah.
It's getting more open, and this used to come up during my teachings because when I teach in Ladakh, I teach to the public. And after my teachings, I usually like to give a talk, and I like Q&A, you know, question and answer. And especially the young generation, they're very straightforward. So I ask my attendants to hand them the mic. So they're very straightforward. They're like, Rinpoche, why aren't we allowed to enter temples?
Yeah.
You know, aren't we humans? Buddha said that all sentient beings are equal. We all have Buddha nature. You know, we also have the perfect human body.
You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our suffering.
Exactly. Yeah, if it wasn't for the menstrual cycle, if it wasn't for all these things, so they used to ask me these questions. So I would say, then I really thought about it, and my answer would be that there is a lack of education in the monastery, first of all, about the woman's physiology, about the woman's body, woman's anatomy, how the woman's body function. And because many of the monks are gelongs, and they've taken strict celibacy vows, not to touch it's not an excuse, it's just my observation, that they've vowed never to touch a woman, and most of them, they live virgin, they die virgin, they never had any kind of interaction with a woman. So a woman is a very alien thing to them, especially this menstrual cycle thing. So I'm sure that in the past, when women sometimes used to come, and they have some old rags that they use to soak up the blood that they're suffering from, and maybe sometimes it must stink, sometimes a few drops here and there, and that would be very scary, to...
Well, also, if you look at the teachings of the Buddha, especially the Pali Canon, when he taught about the unclean nature of the body, he was specifically saying the monk, from the top of his head to the soles of his feet, looks inside at the body, and the kidneys and the guts and the lungs, and they see that there's nothing there which is beautiful or attractive or that you would want to get close to, right? And that's fine. So the monk loses attachment to his body. By the time you get to Nagarjuna and especially Shantideva, it's the woman's body which the monk has to dissect and think how repulsive it is, etc. His body apparently is perfect and pure. It's her. I mean, so this whole duality of putting all the blame out there on her and making her like she's a temptress.
Yeah.
Well, she's not doing anything. I mean, it's the monk's mind that's the problem, not the woman.
Yeah.
But so like even when first His Holiness Dalai Lama was teaching Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, the nuns in Talokpur came from it so depressed and feeling so bad about themselves and so humiliated.
Disappointed?
They were so sad. And, you had to pray hard to come back as a male because it's your only hope. And of course, once somebody pointed this out to His Holiness, he so sorry, that isn't what we were trying to, that wasn't the message we were trying to give. And since that time, he's been much more careful and saying this is written from the boy's point of view, from the girl's point of view, it would be the other way around. But if you see it from the very earliest texts, as I say, that didn't come into it because it wasn't about the other people, it was about oneself. So that one stopped identifying with, if one was handsome or attractive, look how lovely I am, because you would recognize that if you take the skin off, beauty's only skin deep, nothing, once you take the skin off, would be in the least bit cuddly.
Yeah.
And, that's the point.
It would be quite slushy. Yeah.
And everything which comes out from the human body also you wouldn't want.
It is.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing is more enhanced because it's been through the human body.
Yeah, that's the fascinating thing. It goes back to what we discussed at the beginning, how things appear and how things really are. So we get so attracted to this human body, yet like you said, beauty is only skin deep. If you, and how many or how much percentage is the skin of the body? Is very little. I don't know, maybe you do the math, 5%, 10%, right? I mean, it's a very big organ, the skin that covers the body, but it's not very heavy and it's not very dense like the bone. So let's say 5 to 10%. So, and when the fascinating thing is when we talk to somebody, we think we know somebody, right? When I look at my own face in the mirror, I think I know myself, but I'm only looking at my face. It is a very thin skin, and it's only maybe, 5% of my overall body. I do have a huge head. You know what I mean? So how much do you know about yourself? How much do you know about others? We are only seeing, we have never looked at somebody's knees and said, hello Jetsunma, you look so beautiful today. Happy Losar. You never look at somebody's feet like, hello Jetsunma, would you like some biscuit? But that's very awkward. But that is also very much part of Jetsunma Tenzin Palmo, as much as our face. But automatically we're drawn towards the face. We only know the face. And we know very little about other people. We know very little about ourselves. So we live in this very confusing world where we think we know others, we know ourselves, yet we know very little. And forget about others, we know very little about ourselves. That's what the Buddha was trying to point out, that, look underneath your skin, look beyond your face to observe your whole body. That's why when I studied Shantideva's teaching, the meditation chapter number 8, I think. Yeah, 9 is wisdom, 10 is dedication. Chapter number 8, something. And he talked about dissecting, well, unfortunately, the female body. He was speaking from a male's perspective. It was very astonishing. I mean, I would always do it very superficially. Like, okay, I have the skin, I have organs, maybe some dirty things are coming out, that's it. But if you pay close attention to your body, if you go layer by layer, it is so incredibly powerful, this meditation. And you also get to know a lot about yourself, how impure the body is. And therein also lies the paradox. We talk about the 37 impurities of the body, like you mentioned, but at the same time we talk about how precious it is. And how,
well, we need it.
Right. So there's this very weird paradox. And to explain that to the female, part of the community, it's quite difficult, because we are trained and taught to see them as inferiors, right? But then that's not true. They have the Buddha nature in their mind, right? And okay, animals also have Buddha nature, but they don't have the physical component, which is the precious human body. But women also have the precious human body. If you look at the Talwaje, the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments, it's all there. I did the whole calculation. I mean, it's all there. So why are women inferior to men? Why can't we allow women to enter the temples? And then some of the monks will, I got this from many different sections of the monasteries, and they say, oh, but that makes the statues impure. Okay, that was their argument. And I said, then what is the point prostrating and praying to such a weak statue? This Buddha or Bodhisattva or whatever deity that you're prostrating is not worth prostrating. It's so weak that
and biased
that a menstruating woman, he can't handle it, He's literally like, oh, please don't let her in. That's not an 8th level.
But of course, that comes from Hinduism, in fact.
Okay.
Where, especially with the higher castes, and their concern about pollution and purity. So that's, it's like also, having higher castes and lower castes in some of these Himalayan places. You say, but it's nothing to do with Buddhism. But it's, that's a culture
thing.
which
Yes,
they've picked up.
Yeah. It is. It's. I'm trying my best.
And why aren't women allowed in the protectant places?
Exactly.
What's Mahakala got against women?
Well, that's what they say. They say that it dilutes the statue, it dilutes the deity. So I said, I will not prostrate to such a deity. And again, the irony is that when you look at the Satung Chubji, the 14 downfalls as a tantric practitioner, the 14th one is
if you despise women.
Yeah, if you despise women, it is a downfall.
Yep.
I mean, it's,
Yeah.
His Holiness Gelong Drukpa taught us that whenever you get out of your bed, okay, when you plant your feet on the floor, you make sure that you put your left foot first, because that represents wisdom, woman. So you pay your respect to the feminine energy. So you put the left first and then the right afterwards. Whenever you enter a room, try to enter with the left first and the right afterwards. Tap the share of wisdom in,
Yes, yeah.
So he said, without wisdom, you can't achieve enlightenment. And if you despise women, if you are mean towards women, there is no enlightenment. So you have to respect women. You have to respect the feminine energy. Yeah. So that's incredible.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's certainly shown the way by the head of a lineage actually living with the nuns rather than with the monks. And nobody has been reinforcing the power of the feminine as His Holiness has. Really quite amazing. And, you know, I mean, he's had to pay for it because he's not made him very popular in certain circles.
Yeah, but I think to be progressive, you need to make some sacrifices and compromises to what the society usually, you know.
And his nuns are amazing, as you know.
They're so powerful, really powerful. But I'm also very inspired by what you're doing here, you know, really, equally. All these lovely nuns that I met today, they come from such humble regions, really. And they are, some of them are really, they come from very, how can I say this, disadvantaged communities where access is very difficult. I met some from Pangi. If you travel from Lahore to Pangi without, you know, soiling your pants, believe me, you are a very high level bodhisattva, you are a warrior. Because the road there is one of the worst roads in India. It's so scary, Jetsunma. Have you ever been?
Yeah, I love Pangi.
But that road, I also love Pangi, but the road is...
We used to walk. There was no vehicles when we went.
Yeah, I think I would prefer to walk also. Last time when I went there, it was very scary.
Yeah.
But connectivity is very difficult, you know. They don't get the same facilities in terms of education and you know, not hygiene and
it's interesting because they're between Chamba and Lahore, which are now quite sophisticated. And yet even in the time of Gyalwanga Sangpa, he complained about them. And then, I mean, he lived as simply as Milarepa. But even he was shocked by their level of cultivation, how primitive they were, compared even with Ladakh in those days in the 13th century. And of course in Kasia, where he lived for so long.
So all these girls coming here.
It's interesting why it should be. But anyway, we have quite a few girls from Pangi, and they're very nice girls.
Kinnaur also, some of the regions. Ladakh is getting better now with connectivity. Lahore is getting, you know, very well connected, and they have all kinds of facilities. But then to give hope to these young girls, to not only teach them modern education, but to bring them on the path of the Dharma. And not only that, but also to give them the confidence to do things on their own and to live in their own community and to speak up and to take care of themselves. I think that is maybe, you know, that's a beautiful legacy. That is a real empowerment.
It is, it is. And I think the thing is that the Buddha Dharma in general has lost out because they did not trust in the wisdom of the female. And I mean, why did you not want to be a female? Because you didn't have the opportunities that were given to the males. So if you give them the same opportunities, then they're going to come up. And everybody wins. It's not like the males go down because the women come up. I mean, it's not a competition.
Yeah. In Ladakh, at least, the women are incredibly powerful. They are so much part of our local, you know, whatever happens in daily life. They're very responsible. They are becoming great leaders. Even in my own society, where I have around 300-400 people as my followers, they help me with the construction of the monastery that I'm building. They're lovely people. They're like my family. The president I've appointed is a woman. She's brilliant. She's intelligent. She's compassionate, hardworking, dedicated. What more do you need? You know. So I look across different societies, and I'm seeing so many changes where women are, you know, coming up. But I think still a lot of work needs to be done, and especially through social media, like the recording that we're doing today. These are so powerful, Jetsunma, because people can literally access them, you know, in their pockets. You don't have to go knock on the door and give them leaflets. Hey, I'm Jetsunma, this is Palga Rinpoche, we want to spread awareness about this and that. No, you just do a simple recording, and a lot of our messages get broadcasted. It's an incredible medium. And I'm also, you know, very grateful all the teachings that you share on Instagram. Yeah, I read them with your beautiful face. There's a picture of you, and then you have these beautiful, simple teachings that are so easy to understand, so applicable. And I learned so much from your teachings also. Yeah, really. I'm so grateful to be here today.
I am so gratified that you came to visit us today. Thank you, Rinpoche. And now you know where we are.
Yeah.